dynamics have become even more evident, particularly as it relates to Iranian females. There is no need really for me to spell out the oppressive conditions under which women and young girls in Iran are living. Better than me, these females understand the poverty of thought that is pushing against their life, one in which women are treated as second-class citizens with little to no access to education, healthcare, technology, justice, and basic human rights such as freedom of speech and expression. There is also no need to spell out the root cause of drastic actions taken by young women such as Sahar Khodayari, also known as Blue Girl. Sport, something so basic, is used as a tool to harass women. It's no wonder that women's sports teams in Iran receive no government support, no sponsors, and have to deal with bans on media coverage of their tournaments. So not only are they not allowed to watch sports games, their own participation in sports is banned from the public's view. In other areas of society, female nurses and teachers, for example, they operate within a system which pays below the poverty line, if or when they actually do get paid. In prisons, women and young girls, particularly those accused of having different political views than the regimes, are faced with shortage of water and detergents and disinfectants, shortage of PPEs like masks and gloves, lack of space for quarantine, lack of ventilation, and inadequate medical care, which have all expedited the spread of COVID. And yet, despite these pressures and injustices in every stratum of society, women have been leading ongoing protests against the crimes and violations of a regime rooted in the belief that to be a woman is a sin. The fact that women continue to be the force of change, despite the dangers of harassment, imprisonment, and death, tells me that they've chosen to fight back instead of staying silent. And they're right. Silence is not an option because it won't change the status quo. Iranian women have a history of fighting back against systemic violence. President-elect Madame Mariam Rajavi is one of these leading progressive figures who has not only defied all the odds and broken glass ceilings, but has inspired an attitude and spirit of fighting for freedom, democracy, and human rights for a society where women are treated equally in all spheres of life. Her 10-point blueprint translates into the following in terms of gender equality in a future Iran. 1, fundamental freedoms and rights. Proposes that women should have the same human rights and fundamental freedoms as men, and vows to ban any type of discrimination against women in order to ensure that women are equal to men in all economic, social, and political spheres. 2, legal equality. Proposes that women and men should have equal protection under the law. This includes raising the criminal age of responsibility for girls in Iran to 18, making courts recognize that testimonies and affidavits from women hold equal weight to those of men, guaranteeing women's access to the police and the courts in cases of violence, rape, and sexual assault, discrimination, and deprivation of liberty. 3, clothing. Proposes that women should choose their own clothing without government interference, meaning a repeal of the law on mandatory hijab or veiling, and laws that allow employers to dictate the wearing of the hijab. 4, equal political participation. It proposes that women should be allowed to equally participate in political leadership, including formulation and implementation of government policy, the holding of public office, the ability to perform all public functions at all levels of government. More specifically, equal political participation would mean the removal of any law banning or limiting women's occupation of senior posts in the government and the judiciary. It also means implementing a system when at least half of senior government positions must be given to women, and at least half of the candidates for election from any political party must be women. This system is already in place at the NCRI and has worked quite well to promote equality. 5, in her 10-point plan, is economic equality. It proposes that women and men should have equal economic rights, including equal opportunities in the job market, equal pay, and equal employment rights. Women should also have equal access as men do in terms of inheritance, entering contracts, and property management. 6 in the blueprint, equality in the family sphere. It proposes that women should have equal rights in family life, which means the freedom to marry or divorce as they see fit without coercion, and that both parents are responsible for child rearing, which means that they have equal rights over their children. Equality here also translates into a ban on underage marriage, polygamy, and any governmental interference into the private lives of women. 7, criminalizing violence. Along with the banning of death penalty and torture, rape, and other forms of violence against women, acts of intimidation, the forcible deprivation of women's rights the forcible deprivation of women's freedoms will be criminalized. 8, banning sexual exploitation. Sexual exploitation, such as sex trade, trafficking of women, and forced prostitution, forcing women into prostitution, would be banned. 9, repeating Sharia law. The repeal of the mullah's Sharia law would remove many sexist laws that this regime has been using, including stoning as punishment and the acceptance of crimes against women. And finally, 10 in her blueprint, social benefits, proposes that women must have equal access to men as to social benefits relating to retirement, unemployment, old age, and other forms of disability, and that women from marginalized groups should receive special financial, educational, and medical support from the government. Madam Rajavi also believes that pregnant women and new mothers should have rights to maternity leave, medical care, and government-funded daycare when they return to work. I'm very confident that not only would Madame Rajavi's 10-point plan eliminate the existing egregious laws and crimes against women in Iran, but it will also achieve and advance the objectives set forth in the Beijing Platform of Action. Indeed, it will take active teamwork across geographical and cultural boundaries to create an equitable world for women everywhere. I thank you for your time.
Good afternoon. So lovely to hear that theme from Schindler's List. We never get tired of that. It's always so moving. Thank you so much. This is Dr. Antonia Felix. I'm a writer, university instructor, racial equity consultant, and member of the advisory board of the Women's Freedom Forum. It's an honor to be here today, and I would like to briefly highlight a point about this year's theme of advancing women's decision making in public life around the world. One way to promote this, of course, is to give women access to public office, from government appointments to opportunities to run for elected office. Many countries institute quotas to ensure women's participation in their parliaments and assemblies. And these quotas are responsible for progress in women's rights and quality of life, and also, in some cases, for creating new challenges for women who gain power within cultures that have traditionally inhibited their roles. Let's take a look at the situation for women in national parliaments in the three neighboring countries of Afghanistan, Pakistan, and Iran. In Afghanistan, 68 women, or 27%, are present in the lower house, which is called the Walesi Jirga, and 28% make up the upper house, the Mishrano Jirga. The law has required these quotas since 2004. The lower house quota provides seats for at least 2 women from each of the 34 provinces of the country. In the upper house, some members are elected and 1/3 are appointed by the president. The law states that 50% of those appointments by the president must be women, which accounts for that 28% of the Mishrano Jirga seats allotted for women. These high percentages outdo those in many Western democracies, including the United States, with our 23% women's representation in the House of Representatives and 25% of women in the Senate. But serving in public office in Afghanistan brings many challenges for women, including attacks by the Taliban. Last summer, for example, Fawzia Kufi, a former member of parliament and a leading women's rights activist, was shot while shopping with her sister at a market near Kabul. She survived the attempt with a wounded arm and was able to serve in her historic role as one of 4 women in the 21-member Afghan government peace negotiating team for talks with the Taliban. Pakistan also mandates quotas for women's representation in its assemblies. 20% of the National Assembly and 19% of the Senate are comprised of women. Women's participation in lawmaking has resulted in many new laws addressing women's issues, such as the Honor Killing Act of 2004, Protection of Women Act of 2006, laws passed to simplify the bail process for women prisoners, criminalization of customary laws that have demeaned women and inhibited their lifestyles, human trafficking ordinance that was from 2002, sexual harassment laws that were passed in 2010, and it goes on, there's more. The Prevention of Anti-Women Practices of 2011, and acid crime laws of 2010, Women in Distress Fund and Detention Act of 2011. They passed an anti-rape law. And finally, they have passed anti-honor killings laws. So while Pakistan's women legislators have been at the forefront of achieving those successes, they have also had to work within what one recent study described as a hostile and unwelcoming work environment in those assemblies. The study on 200 women seated in the National Assembly, Senate, and provincial assemblies reported that nearly 1/3 of the women experienced silencing in the form of not being allowed to speak during meetings or being excluded from meetings altogether. 26% of the women in that study had received harassing text messages or media posts. social media posts, and 11% said they had been the target of verbal insults. 6% had actually been physically harassed. Moving on to Iran, very briefly again. Iran, which does not mandate quotas for women, in their current parliament, which contains 276 members, only 16 are women. This means women make up approximately 6% of Iran's parliament. This low figure gives Iran a ranking of 181 in a listing of 192 countries in terms of women's representation in national parliaments and assemblies. While the small size of this group is certainly concerning, it is actually an improvement in this country. In 1980, only 4 women, or 1%, were elected to parliament. So the current situation could be seen as a 4-fold increase, a move in the right direction, but it took more than 4 decades to make that incremental positive change. In spite of an enormous call for parliamentary quotas for women from the public, Iran's parliament voted down such a proposal last year. These brief examples show that the past few decades have brought results in our international goals for empowering women to take a seat at decision-making tables. In an interview last fall, Afghanistan's Fawzia Kufi, who I briefly introduced previously, expressed her belief in Afghan women's empowerment and advancement once they are given more opportunities. I have seen how talented and brilliant our women are, despite all the oppression they face, she said. If we give them one small chance, they will grab it. And in terms of being on the peace negotiation team, she said, this is the first time that women are participating in such an important process where they can discuss and decide the future of the country. These talks are crucial for their own future and that of other women. Every minute that we spend here is history. I think that every moment we spend in sharing the stories of women like this, women in these events, such as we're having now, spreading news and raising awareness and hope is also history. So I thank my fellow panelists and everyone involved in this year's Beijing Platform of Action meetings. Thank you so much.
Whew. That's heartbreaking, yet powerful. It's hard to follow. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, wherever you are in the world. We appreciate you joining in today. My name is Lynn Dykstra. I am a volunteer board member with Women's Freedom Forum in Washington, D.C., and serve as the WFF representative for United Nations issues. Women's Freedom Forum is a nonprofit, non-governmental, independent research and educational women's rights organization associated with the United Nations Department of Global Communications. We seek to bring the voices of marginalized women into the public discourse to create awareness and cause for corrective action on a systemic scale. Much of our research covers issues in the Middle East countries where social issues such as gender apartheid, violence against women, denial of education, employment, and other issues are prevalent. We seek out and highlight NGO and individual successes and working solutions to these issues. My recent professional career covers 3 decades of photographing the highest level of international and US national political leaders and events. This experience expanded my commitment to advocate for those who support the quest for human rights, particularly women's rights and gender equality. I am pleased to be here today to speak to what it takes for leaders of a similar calling to work toward fulfilling the Beijing platform goals. I spoke last Tuesday on another of our panels, and I feel it's worth echoing today many of the points I made earlier in the week. We all know the adoption of the 1995 Beijing Platform for Action includes working toward gender equality. This milestone declaration set our path to collectively reach for UN CSW 2030 Sustainable Development Goals and strive for number 5, gender equality. Without any doubt, we continue to move this agenda forward worldwide. Over 25,000 women and several enlightened men are here on the 2021 CSW 65 platform to exchange experiences of confrontations and pain and to share visions and successful solutions to the issues that challenge women throughout the world. This alone is a testament that we are a force for change. And I might add, a force for adaptation. No one could have imagined before 2020 what was ahead of us. Each of you represent a group of worldwide leaders who work to correct wrongs and create lasting advances in women's rights. That is a heavy goal. We know the whys, but what does it really take? Wouldn't it be great if there was just a master plan? So many parts of our world are unbearably disconnected from women's rights and a gender equal goal. We experience our own pain or witness the pain of others through family violence, systemic misogyny, brutal attacks on women's bodies, lack of health care, food, housing, clothing, illegal imprisonment, physical and psychological torture, the denial of education or economic opportunities. This list is unending and overwhelming. The path can be brutal. Toss in a worldwide pandemic and the overwhelm quadruples. But when there is a success, oh, the rewards for all involved are so worth it. A nagging internal message grows louder and louder. It says, against all odds, this needs to change, and I will help change it. From this desire comes a personal commitment to move forward and add our unique skills to the worldwide collective committed for gender equality and women's rights. From personal commitment comes action. Some of us are experienced enough to jump right into these causes, and those of us who are developing into leaders build on the same sense of commitment. Our headline on this forum is Implementing Beijing+25+1 Platform of Action During the COVID Pandemic. In my earlier presentation, I spoke of the strong need for group participation on a world scale, and here I will add in the word activation. Women's personal and collective power is in our actions, and our actions are the cornerstone for change. Let's see for a moment how we feel about our personal power. It resides within us. It's not external. No one hands it over to us. We own it and we share it with like-minded goal setters. Others try to steal it from us. We grab it back. And especially misogynistic, degrading, disrespectful authoritarians are not going to share their power with anyone, let alone women. We know that. So we strengthen our power and pull it from within. We enhance it through mutual respect, and we share it in powerful, positive ways. In these 2 weeks at UNCSW 65, we have access to over 25,000 women and enlightened men to share the visions toward a gender equal goal. Now that's using our power. From personal commitment and strength of internal power comes the motivation to challenge the current situations. And oh, do these extraordinary situations exist in a COVID world? And again, as experienced leaders, it is our responsibility to support the women who are defining their own personal commitment. We give them guidance and the space to help others help themselves. Since the Beijing Platform for Action, women are very slowly gaining on the world political sphere, but certainly not at an acceptable level. The global share of women in national parliaments is 25.5%, yet more parliaments than not remain male-dominated. With data gathered by the Interparliamentary Union as of January 2021, women are represented as heads of state or heads of government in just 22 countries out of over 150. There are just 13 countries where women hold more than 50% or more of ministerial positions. This is a far cry toward reaching gender equality, but we do recognize those countries who understand that women's leadership counts. Women continue to lead the cause for women's rights in villages, reservations, towns, cities, and states throughout the world. Women willingly put their own lives on the line to protest for their legal rights, as we just saw in the previous video. And way too many times these lives are lost through oppression, imprisonment, or physical or psychological torture. Do women back off? No, the determination grows. And we see progress in small but powerful ways. More women are elected to local councils where grassroots activism can be more effective. Women in worldwide religious communities open their doors. Protests continue. International pressure is applied. One by one, lives are saved, a policy is amended, a discriminatory law is abolished, and more women begin to benefit from the brave leadership and sacrifices of those who came before them. It now becomes their responsibility to continue to lead others as they were led. When groups of women are focused on expanding the advancements of gender equality and women's rights, the energy resonates throughout the world. Issues of violence against women are prevalent, especially during this COVID pandemic. Physical, psychological, sexual abuse, forced marriages, and denial of needed resources create huge challenges for the NGOs, caregivers, and political leaders. Statistics show domestic violence has increased over 20% or more in some countries during COVID. And again, those are just the reported cases. Women have no place to go to get away from domestic violence. Husbands are out of work and tensions are extreme. In Iraq, for example, Community police, a form of family mediation, attempt to diffuse the reported domestic violence issues. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. COVID vaccines will begin to help curb this terrible plague, but as of spring 2021, many countries have not started vaccinating their people yet, and new cases continue to rise. We are still a long way from normal. But there are successful paths toward gender equality. In February of this year, a huge gender equality step was taken in Afghanistan. Calm Air, the country's only private airline, is the first ever airline to fly an all-woman crew in their country's history. The young woman co-pilot joined the experienced woman captain in piloting the plane. Passengers were served by an all-woman crew. This is a huge open door for Afghan women in this male-dominated industry. And it happened because of personal commitments to reach this goal. Our co-pilot had perseverance and the help of others helping her to help herself. She has now carved a path for others to follow. And the plane, a 23-year-old Boeing 737-500, is just 1 year older than our co-pilot. She is age 22. On this year's International Women's Day, Amnesty International France invited a National Council of Resistance of Iran Women's Committee delegation to participate in paying homage to the many brave women political prisoners who are held in Iranian regime's misogynistic prisons. No, we do not forget you. The NCRI, with a headquarters in France, is led by Madame Mariam Rajavi. With her powerful leadership style, she empowers other NCRI women leaders with full authority and responsibility to work together to fulfill the goal of a free and democratic Iran. NCRI is committed to the UNCSW Sustainable Development Goals with special emphasis on gender equality. The NCRI women work with the precision of a laser focus, the commitment of determination, the compassion of caregivers, and the powerful strength of lions. We can all learn from this successful leadership style. Now it's Beijing, China, 2021. 25 and a half years after the 1995 Beijing Platform for Action, a first of its kind court ruling was a victory for women's rights. In a recent case in divorce court in Beijing, the husband was ordered to pay his ex-wife a monthly alimony plus 50,000 yen, the equivalent of about 7,000 US dollars, for having borne the brunt of housework and childcare during their 5-year marriage. A new civil code is on the books in China that allows the divorcing party to seek back pay for work, such as housework. The judge said that typically assets are split equally, but housework constitutes intangible property value. This step toward equal rights and recognition of the economic value of women's work in marriage was finally officially acknowledged 25 plus years after the Beijing Platform for Action. Just think about it. As we grow into experienced leaders, it is our responsibility to help others discover their own leadership assets so they can, in turn, help others help themselves. This is the path to gender equality, built on our collective strengths. Remember, we are all a recurring, connected chain of positive mutual support on all links. The success of a personal plan is not complete without reviewing and implementing leadership actions such as these. And in the stressful and challenging year of COVID, we need these guidelines even more. Be focused on the goal and stay on its path. Leave the organizational ego at the doorstep. Raise your voices. Build on the strength of each other. Help others help themselves. Pool your skills and your objectives with other NGOs toward the common goal. Develop and execute a plan. Sometimes the crisis is so immediate that we must toss that plan. So Have a backup plan, then implement it. Be truthful and straightforward with all your intended goals. Be a team. Leave no one behind, not your coworkers, not your NGO partners, not your funders, not the women you are helping. Leave no one behind. And last of all, make this first. Be kind to yourself. We all know the phrase, it takes a village. These few examples show that we have many challenges, but one success will lead to another. And our ultimate goal of reaching the Beijing platform goals of gender equality can be reached case by case by case. May each of you commit to activating and supporting many gender equal successes. Thank you. And again, for those of you who joined us today, thank you for being active in the cause for gender equality and human rights. Whether you are heading up an NGO or you're just beginning the commitment to help others help themselves, your individual positive power is added to a worldwide energy force toward the successful advancement of women's rights. Thank you to our panelists for your enlightened presentations, to our talented artistic musical interlude, and to the fearless women whose voices were silenced too early by oppressive, fearful, and dictatorial actions. We honor you in hundreds of ways and assure you that your ultimate sacrifice will not be in vain. It is here I would normally say thank you and have safe travels home from New York. But this is a COVID year and a Zoom year, and despite that, we are actually more connected worldwide. Please stay safe and lead on. We will have, if we have questions, we will go with that. And if I don't see questions right now, so I will say again, please stay safe and lead on. Thank you.
Du même endroit. I can hear you, Jerry, but I've got nothing on the mic.
In Kigali, she wakes up, she looks at chores. In Hanoi, Natal, Ramallah, in Tangier, she takes a breath, lifts up her voice. In Lahore, La Paz, Kampala, though she's half a world away, something in me wants to say, we are one woman. You cry and I hear you. We are one woman. You hurt and I hurt too. We are one woman. Your hopes are mine, and we shall shine. In Wallace, she speaks the truth. She reaches out, then teaches others how to. In Jaipur, she gives her name. She lives without shame. In Manila, Sultanbul, though we're different as can be, we're connected, she with me. We are one woman. Your courage keeps me strong. We are one woman. You sing, I sing she's half a world away. Something in me wants to say, we are one woman. Your victory sings our song. We are one woman. You rise and I stand tall. We are one woman. Your world is mine, and we shall shine. Shine, shine, shine. We shall shine. Shine, shine, shine. We shall shine. Shine, shine, shine.
Thank you. Wow. As a woman and as a photographer, that just is awesome. Awesome. Thank you all again. Please stay safe and lead on. Thank you, Antonia. Thank you so much. We appreciate all that you do and all that each of you do who are on this call today. Thank you.